Hello, everyone. My name is Jake, and I'm going to give you a quick rundown of my experience at the Summer Slaughter 2021 Age of Sigmar tournament. Just a fair warning, I didn't really plan on doing this battle report going into the tournament, but I kept taking pictures to show to friends as games are going on, and I had at least one from every round. So I figured I'd give my experience being one of the few Kharadron Overlords at the event, and just wanted to kind of run through how it all went. So starting off with the event summary, this was a 100-player event. At least 100 players had registered. I don't know if all showed, but there's at least, I think, 98. It's my first 2-day Age of Sigmar event. I had gone to a 1-dayer about 3 weeks ago just to kind of get 3-0 under my belt. I've maybe played 10 to 15 games total, somewhere in that ballpark, and I've been playing KO for about 2 to 3 years now. So have a bit of experience from 2-0, but 3, as we all know, is a bit of a different game. Going into the tournament, the most popular armies from that top tier that you really had to plan for once lists were published seemed to be Seraphon, Sons of Behemoth, and Lumineth Realmlords. Going into the tournament, I felt actually okay about all three of those matchups. One of my good playing partners plays Seraphon, so had some experience there. Suns, I didn't really know too much to expect. Honestly, haven't been able to get a game in really versus them, but understood the general idea of it being somewhat of a DPS check mixed with a could you handle the toughness, mobility of that army. And then with Lumineth Realmlords, I know that there's a lot of interesting things they do. However, I think with KO having all that shooting, it's definitely something that would lean into clearing them out and something they don't really have a great answer to. Being fragile. So I did kind of like the layout of the tournament going in. There wasn't that many Tzeentch or demons of or dark elves, daughters of Cain. Sorry, brain fart there. But there were a few of each. I mean, there was an Archeon Kairos list that won the 1-day event I had gone to that was going here, and there was also a American team championship player on daughters of Cain. So while there wasn't that many, there were definitely players that were respectable, and a lot of were just really strong lists top to bottom in the field. As far as my expectations, I didn't really know how KO would stack up. I know I could pull a win or two off of some of those armies I just mentioned, but it didn't really feel like it was in the bag. Playing 3-0 so far as KO, I feel like our main strength is the killing power and the ability to avoid fights and be mobile. And I'm just not sure that's really what you're trying to optimize for in this edition. We don't really have great monsters, and we don't really have a way to kind of hold objectives or kind of be stubborn there. So the kind of plan of clearing your enemy out and scoring later, well, that kind of was really strong in 2-0, especially towards the end when boats got reduced in cost. I didn't know if it would really convert well into this edition. Additionally, it was my first time running Gotrek in a 2-day tournament. As I told you, I ran him at the 1-dayer and really liked what he offered to the army. He's not very fast, but the rest of the army is. So you can kind of funnel into him and make sure that the stuff running away gets shot off because it'll kind of be alone by its flank. If they did cluster up, it was great for Gotrek because he could kind of just run in and buzzsaw through. There was still the fear of horde armies. He can only kill so much, and if they kind of pull from the front rank, he might not get that second round of combat. And he is fishing for sixes a lot of times on those rolls to hit. So was a little concerned about that. I was trying to do a mixed bag list here. I've run Ziflin in the past. That was probably the most powerful build in 2-0, that Alpha Strike with the Warp Lightning. But, for this event, I just wanted to try a little bit of everything and see what I liked and what I didn't. And really thought going in that I might get about, 3 wins. I thought the book's still really potent and strong. It's not necessarily the most fun matchup for me or my opponent most of the games, just because it is really just a race for me to kill them. And because it's just so hard for me to compete with the objective scoring a lot of the time. So that's always a challenge. And some of the battle tactics, I just can't do, or, I don't have monsters. So again, it does become one of those things where the games become relatively lower scoring. So without further ado, let's kind of jump into it. Round 1 was Stormcast Eternal on the scenario First Blood. Here's my opponent's list on the right. I'm not going to kind of talk through it, but I will give you a general rundown that he did have Gotrek as well, which was kind of fun to get that Gotrek mirror match. I'd also seen him at Starbucks earlier that day. So I was like, it's kind of cool, 100-man event, to kind of run into someone and then play them later is nice. Additionally, you know, the stuff that was in this list wasn't particularly stuff that I was too afraid of. There wasn't, you know, that a lot of mortal wound output. He wasn't running anything too super mobile, to be honest, as well. So I felt like my boats would be relatively safe most of this game. It seemed like a lot of his strategy was to screen and do a lot of shooting. However, you know, while he had a high volume of shots, they weren't exactly high damage output. So while Gotrek would maybe be in danger when those Hurricane crossbows came out, I felt like the boats could probably shrug it off with the 2-up armor save a lot of the time. And, you know, I felt like once he was out, and, you know, I was able to shoot him off. So kind of looking at the board, you can see that it was pretty empty at first. You know, I think that, you know, he was really holding a lot in ambush, and I was just kind of waiting to see where he would go. But as things developed, what essentially came down to here is, I don't really need to get too much into it, was he would pop up, he would shoot at me, and I would usually, you know, shrug it off. I didn't really let him get any great rounds of shooting on Gotrek, and once he was up, I could kind of pick him off at will. He ended up with his Gotrek in that top right corner. My Gotrek was in the bottom left corner, so they didn't interact the whole game. They just held on to one objective each and screened. And then, you know, it was basically my entire army shooting off what's in the middle of the board there for him. He didn't really have the combat prowess to come in and threaten me. So, you know, by turn 3 or 4, I don't think he had any models left, maybe like 1 or 2 units. So it was a relatively quick game and lopsided here. And it really just came down to he would pop up and I would kind of shoot him off. So, you know, I think Stormcast is getting a new book, and this is an interesting way to build them. And I certainly think the Hurricane Crossbones have a place if they do make it in the new book, as, you know, a solo unit that can pop up and do a high number of shots, especially in the high armor meta. You're just kind of hoping for ones there, but, you know, maybe not the best matchup versus KO. Round 2 was Skaven Tooth and Nail. This is a list that ended up actually getting 4th at the event. No spoilers here, but it was Storm Fiends with all the stuff you'd expect: Clan Rats, Storm Vermin, so not just 9 Storm Fiends, just 6, as well as Tranquil. So, you know, the ability to really just clear out hordes and be super stubborn. For the event, me and my buddies were talking that we thought Skaven actually would have been really awesome into this event with how it shook out. While Giants might be a little tough for them in general, they just are a really solid army right now that not enough people are probably playing. They can really kind of go toe-to-toe with anyone. They don't have too many bad matchups, and they just cause a lot of problems. So looking at deployment here, you can see I kind of just stayed in the corner to block off the knothole ambush. If she did want to get aggressive with her Storm Fiends and come at the leftmost knothole, it would be kind of coming into Gotrek there, as well as not really shooting anything, perhaps my frigate a little bit, but I didn't feel like I was within that threat range where all 4 Storm Fiends would be able to shoot, just the 2 long range. So was kind of feeling okay there and had cover with most of my units. As the game progressed, what you can see happened here is I ended up working into her deployment zone because she really was pushing to me. So I went into the back left there. The Gotrek kind of stayed in the center there. You can see if I scroll over here, this is Gotrek Grunwinson. I was using the Christmas KO model for him. I kept a unit back just to block off the Storm Fiends coming around the rear. And my army was just kind of shifted up here to shoot from behind and really clear this flank of Storm Vermin. She actually had a really interesting play that I think is very good versus Gotrek. Every turn she was putting up the shackle spell, endless spell, in the middle here. So Gotrek was kind of limited to where, you know, he could go in. He couldn't make this charge for the first 3 turns of the game because shackles would be up. I think this was during her magic phase. I took this photo. This inevitably turned into a loss for me. What happened is over 3 turns, you can see the shackles down here now. Gotrek failed really to do too much of anything. I tried to make him a wizard every heroic phase, but he couldn't really roll the 7 or 8 up to unbind shackles, allowing his army to kind of get around me. And while I did shoot off, as you can see, many of the small rats, Tranquil ended up getting through here. And what ended up happening here is on turn 4, Gotrek actually did get the shackles removed. So he was able to actually come charged Tranquil, put through about 9 wounds. So he Tranquil was down to 9. He scurried away, came down here and cleared off this bottom thing. And turn 5, I had Monstrous Takeover. And if I clear Tranquil, not only do I get Monstrous Takeover, but I believe I was able to deny her battle tactic of Conquer for this area here, because these were dead at this point. But what happened was in one round of combat, I needed to do 9 runes with Gotrek into Tranquil to seal that win off, as well as hold the line and keep my battle line alive. It was just a huge swing. And long story short, I could not get all 9 wounds done to Tranquil. So that was that. Just couldn't roll 6s on Gotrek and could not dispel the shackles. So it just took me way too long. I think that this game's super interesting in that, 1, it shows the potency of Skaven, and 2, shows that Gotrek, who's kind of seen as a problem, if you take that endless spell shackles, especially into KO, where I wasn't running magic this tournament at least, or dispels, I really am kind of stuck just to eat that, and I couldn't really do anything with him, as you know, because as you may know, shackles does not allow you to run and charge, and I just was moving forward just to try and get out of that range, and I couldn't sneak a double to get off it either. So that was the story of that game. Moving into the next one, round 3, I was 1-1, and I got to play Ironjawz. I know Ironjawz is a pretty potent army, but I know that they've kind of taken a hit, especially this edition, due to unit coherency. What you'll notice about this list is that he did take Gordrak. So he didn't take the double cabbages. He took the single name character, which my friend who was an Ironjawz player told me was a little bit of a mistake here, potentially. Kind of going into the game, I only got one picture. Essentially what happened here is turn 1, he shoved his Warthogs and Gordrak forward into this like center area. To make his charges, he needed, I think, 8 or 9. Didn't make it. So what ended up happening is he stole the double from me. He let me go first, and essentially I just kind of stayed back because I didn't want him to rampage me too hard. So I stayed back, picked off a little bit of units off this flank. His top 1, he came forward. Gordrak misses his charges. Warthogs miss their charges. Turn 2, he gets the double, and he makes a mistake, in my opinion. So you can see that I put a unit of 10 Arcanaut Company here, my frigate here, and Gotrek here. So what I wanted to essentially do was be like, if you come into my main army, I'll do an Overwatch shot with my Ironclad here and have Gotrek countercharge you. So whatever you bring in, I can make pile-ins or Overwatches, and it just kind of created this nice little funnel for me. So what he decided to do was on his double turn is he brought the Warthogs over here to clear off this company and steal a objective. With Burn and Pillage, he would be able to burn it. So he figured he'd be controlling his back line. He'd get this one, and then he sent in Godrak to go clear off my frigate. Unfortunately for him, my frigate was able to survive Godrak. And then on the counter turn, my Gotrek, basically went up this hill, rolled a big charge, and essentially killed all of this. So he did about, I think, 50 wounds, 30 of which being mortal. And he killed not only his champion, but all of those Warthogs. So he essentially got just a unit of Arcanaut Company, while I cleared off, like 800 points here. And then at that point, while I was down points, I could essentially just kind of push up the board and clear off the rest of his army. Talking to him after the game, I think he should have just handed the brutes in, charged the brutes over here. Or if he had done it turn 2, he could have basically charged the brutes, tried to charge turn 1, turn 2, walked over here, made this charge, fought in combat, then obviously fought again into my Ironclad. And, at that point, if you have the brutes over here and then you have the rest of your army come straight in, I don't care if Gotrek can clear off the Warthogs, you probably would have killed my entire point scoring and back line with Godric. So I think he was just really afraid of Gotrek. And I noticed that even in games where I was losing with Gotrek, his just projected threat would protect the brutes really well, which I liked. Because him plus an Overwatch is just a huge deterrent when you can do plays like this. And additionally, it was just nice to have just something to countercharge. So once they did come in, I did, have something other than shooting to kind of threaten and keep them off me. So going into round 4, I was 2-1. I was playing another KO player, overnight. When I looked at pairings, I thought I might go versus Night Haunt or Fire Slayers, but I ended up liking the mirror, which was not really ideal. I think that Gotrek is kind of terrible in the mirror match. Playing versus Gotrek, I think he's just awful versus KO, honestly. Like, you'll never touch anything. And if I really want to, I actually have like probably the best army to make a kill run on him. I mean, I can pile in a ton of thunder attacks and ironclads, and he'll roll enough ones that you force about 20 to 30 3-up checks. It's not impossible to kind of go down. So I think that going into this matchup, I was pretty afraid. I figured that I was basically playing down 400 points here. I didn't get many pictures. Again, the last game and the second game were the one I probably got the most pictures of, because they were the most back and forth, where the games I didn't get a lot of pictures of, quite frankly, it was just kind of me. It was a one-sided tabling one way or the other. So, and I didn't really want to rub it in. I was taking pictures while I was like killing all these models. So what ended up happening here, it was pretty interesting. So you can see he was a 1-drop. I was a 4-drop. I essentially knew that he was going to do the Warp Lightning trick. So what I did is I put Gotrek here, you can see in the top right. And then I strung out all my Arcanaut company so that he didn't really have a clean lane to land on. He was going to have to at least land in the center with all his stuff. I put my frigate on the hill with the 3 Endin riggers behind him. I was okay if he killed my frigate and did the Warp Lightning over here. That was kind of what I was hoping, is that he would kind of focus his efforts on the center, and because of the house and the way Gotrek was positioned, not really get so aggressive on my ironclad side. My thought was that if he went center mass, taking turn 1 and got aggressive, and then I got turn 2, I essentially could ironclad and his ironclad, like I could just put everything into his ironclad or his units and just kind of build out a lead there and hope for the double. Unfortunately, with KO, I don't think it's a very finessed mirror match. It's not like, it's just like a race to whose boats die first. Ultimately, what happened was he did actually make the right play. He brought his ironclad just basically right in front of this house with the heroic move phase, 9 away from Gotrek and the 9 dudes. He blazed down the Warp Lightning here, essentially with his goal of killing my admiral in the boat and killing my ironclad in the back. Ultimately, what happened is my ironclad did survive with 2 wounds. I then got turn 2. I came forward, and basically nothing else took damage. It was really him just piling all his attacks on the ironclads and maybe clearing out a company here in the middle. So on my turn 1, Gotrek moves forward to have like a 7-inch charge into his ironclad, which had his Arcanaut company and both of his characters in it. And then I, healed up my ironclad a little bit and shot back. By the end of turn 2, or turn 1, Gotrek had failed his charge, and I was feeling like if I didn't get the double, I would probably lose the game. Because while I had got rid of the Warp Lightning at that point using a heroic phase discast, I kind of was just in a bad spot where my ironclad was on 3 wounds, his ironclad was on 3 wounds, and as far as objective control went, we basically were out of bodies. It was just boats versus boats and Gotrek at that point. Luckily, I did get the double turn. Gotrek charged into the ironclad. I wiped out what was in it. I killed off his frigate. I killed off his gun hauler. And from that point on, he was just kind of running around with his little, 6-pack of balloon boys while I still had an entire army. So again, not too interesting of a game. I think that essentially it all came down to, could he kill my ironclad turn 1? Or if he didn't kill my ironclad turn 1, could he prevent the double dash eating a Gotrek charge? I think he made the right play. Like, I think it's just one of those things where it's a kind of boring, dicey matchup where someone's going to get tabled or go down pretty early, because once the boats start to fall, it's basically a flimsy army. Round 5, this was one of the lists going into the tournament I was most afraid of. It was 120 zombies with skeletons and Graveguard and Manfred. And I just was, I was like, man, what a tough round 5 pull. I was 3-1, and 4-1 was kind of something that was a high goal for me. So running into this, I knew that Gotrek would be really good in this matchup, but I didn't really know if I would be able to really get through all those bodies in time. So you can see during deployment, I put Gotrek front and center here, and I got my ironclad and my frigate tucked away. Didn't want to get Manfred charged turn 1. he puts all his zombies down except for a summon reserve that he's going to bring out of one of his 4 grave sites, which you can see here, 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 and here, kind of making a mini square in the center. What ends up happening is turn 1, he brings in Manfred. I run past him with Gotrek, just trying to get the center objective and get like a threat bubble on the rest of his army. I put all my shooting into Manfred here in the bottom right. Meanwhile, Gotrek kind of stays, makes this huge threat zone in the center, threatening the bottom left and the back line of his army. He just runs away on turn 2, and also kind of brings Manfred back to the center. Over the course of this game, I took 3 rounds of my entire army shooting at Manfred, and both turn 2 and turn 3, he was on 2 or less runes remaining. And of course, he has Mystic Shield and is going to use all-out defense. So he's looking for anything but once. I made him take, I think, 7 saves turn 2, 7 to 8 saves turn 3 with him, from my Ironclad shooting him. Again, he just needs to roll 1-1 and he dies. He doesn't on either turn. So inevitably what I have to do is charge him with both my boats, hoping that the mortal wounds from balloons dropping will kill him before he can flee away. And again, at this point, I haven't killed any zombies yet. I just got Gotrek in turn 3. I do end up killing Manfred. Unfortunately, it was my Frigates bomb, not my Ironclads bomb, that killed him. And with Predators and Prey, my Ironclad was the Predator. Throughout the rest of this game, essentially at this point, it just becomes a race. I left all 3 markers out, which in hindsight was probably a mistake by me. Bottom of 3, I probably should have picked up either the right or the left marker and then just started driving hard on the other side so that he couldn't get the win 1, win 2, win more. But essentially, it was just at this point, me just killing as much as possible. In this game, I did have one chance to win. My best chance to win was Gotrek. You can see in the top middle here, had to clear out about 19 zombies, I think it was here. And if he did so, I would have got a Predator point that turn for Gotrek killing the zombies. And also turn 5 and 4, I'm not sure he would have been able to do Conquer or like any of his battle tactics. So I would have really started to kind of close back that lead. Unfortunately, Gotrek only killed like 8 zombies, rolled really shitty. He also used the spell to make me -2 attacks on Gotrek, which is super good that Soulblight has. So again, it's just one of those matchups where he has Manfred, who can constantly block off Gotrek and just eat the charge and run. And then even after that, he has spell casting where I'm -1 or -2 attack on Gotrek. So fishing for those 6s gets even harder. So inevitably, I did lose this game as well, bringing me to 3-2 in the tournament overall. I misspelled overall there, so we're just going to leave this slide. And let's kind of get to a recap of the event. I know I went quickly there, and I probably didn't take enough pictures, but I kind of wanted to make this short and sweet to the point. I don't think KO is a particularly interesting army. All of my games, as you saw, just came down to how fast could I kill things. Could Gotrek, make huge swings and me clearing units that I have otherwise don't have a great answer to. And I think that, as you saw, it kind of played out accordingly. The 3 games I won, I essentially tabled my opponent. And they weren't even big wins. I just tabled them and I was down early. And by turn 5, I would kind of squeak it out because I would have my grand strategy and they wouldn't, or I would have my grand strategy, maybe 1 battle tactic up on them. And that was really just how every game went. In my losses, it was versus armies that really could survive and not get tabled very easily and also threaten me with things. It was also armies that have Gotrek answers. I think that Gotrek is something that in this meta is talked about a lot as he's undercosted. Well, here's a couple of things. First of all, I don't even think he's particularly good outside of Kharadron Overlords and probably Fire Slayers. Cities, there's a case to be made, but every person I talked to that ran him in Deepkin, that ran him in Daughters of Cain, that ran him in Stormcast was like, he's just suboptimal. Like, there's just no reason to really run him in these lists. And I would agree. I also think things like Shackles, characters that can run before the second combat, hordes that can pull him outside of that 3-inch for the second fight. I mean, at the end of the day, you're fishing for 6s. If he doesn't get those 6s, -2 Ren's fine. But like -2 Ren, 3 damage, maybe you get 3 or 4 through, so you're putting through 12 damage. Well, you put through 12 damage and you probably didn't get there till turn 3. That's just not enough. So I think that Gotrek, while he's probably KO's only way to put through mortal wounds, still has his limitations. And like I probably will take him again, but I just don't think that he's quite what people are making him out to be. He's not fun either way. And I think that's kind of the problem with the KO book. Either I'm tabling you and we're doing this like huge amounts of damage and you're not really touching me back, or you're avoiding me, or you have answers to me and I kind of just have to like run away from your key pieces until they're dead, and or Gotrik's getting screened. So it just feels like the book, I create a lot of pressure to like answer, do you have, can you hold, on, can you threaten? And if you can, I don't think KO has that much dynamic plays. That I kind of, like I said earlier, I can't steal objectives from people unless they're not on them. Like I essentially, it takes me a turn to even get more than 2 bodies on most objectives. And it's just like, even then it's just tough. So I think looking at the meta, I did take a picture of the winner's army. He was Fire Slayer, or he was Flesh Eater Corpse. I don't know if Flesh Eater Corpse are the dominant army in the meta, but I think it does actually speak to what I was seeing a lot of, which is fast units that are armies that could bring very powerful monsters that didn't die easily were very good too. Giants did well. The high elf player, or the Lumineth Realmworth player that did best, he had that hero that's like the super fox. So I think any army that's like fast and can kind of get places quickly, which KO has, will do well in this meta, just because with the turn 3 pickup of an objective, you kind of have some variance there. There's always, the board's smaller, so it's easier to get, hop around and get places that you might need, and it's harder to just stay in a corner and hide. So I think speed is at an all-time premium, honestly. Even though the board's shrinking, you would think that it might not be. Additionally, I thought that at the top tables, one thing that was, hopeful for me as a KO player was it didn't seem like there was too many horde armies. Like, I think that in general, that the edge still probably goes to, can you kill things over, can you survive and hold on? I think Skaven and Soulblight might be the exception as more people start to play them. And hopefully with the new Orc book, you'll see some of that, but it still felt, at least at this tournament, and maybe because it's early on in the edition, there's a lot of aggressive armies that can take advantage of the double turn well, but also are mobile enough to react and, fight multiple rounds or shoot hard if they need to early. Additionally, with KO, I think I'll be making some considerable list changes as I follow into my next event here in New Orleans next month. I think not being able to stop spells is a huge disadvantage. In 2.0, it didn't really matter. Like, you were either going against a wizard that was +4 to cast and it was going to do everything it wanted, or you weren't. I think there's more subtlety in 3.0. It feels like there's more small wizards that give out that Mystic Shield, which essentially just neuters my whole army, because my whole army is essentially Rend 1 to being no Rend. So if I can stop like even a simple Mystic Shield, I think that's going to be super helpful. I also just don't know if I should even be caring about bodies. Like, I usually run 30 Arcanaut Company as my core. One, because I think they look cool and I believe in conventional Warhammer armies. But two, and kind of more importantly here, because I thought that, okay, at least I can bring 30 bodies to the table. So if I need to at least get 10 on if you have a hero on there that's counts as 5, I can at least put 10, drop off 10 dudes, and that contests it. But I'm just not sure that bodies matter, at least in KO right now. I just don't think that the bodies get there. Like, by the time you're there and you drop them off, it's probably already too late. You're better just killing off what's on that objective and counting as 2. So I also don't think that my battle regiment was optimized. I tried to be a 4-drop for this tournament, but as you saw, like, everything I played was either like a super high drop or a 1 or 2. Orcs were a 1 or 2. Skaven outdropped me and made me gave me the choice. Even the really only armies that I did outdrop was Soulblight, but it was like, it didn't really matter. He had like 8 or 10, so I think I'm better off probably just saying screw it. 4 drops or 5 drops doesn't really particularly matter. Either go all in and be the 1 or 2 drop and try and dictate that you're going to go second and go for the double, or do a hard alpha early, or just be an 8 drop and kind of build your list accordingly, because the double turn still does have a huge impact on this game. So while I would hope that I never have to go first, because I like just sitting in my corner and then getting to go second and react, I think that unfortunately, I might not have a choice moving forward. So a little bit of a crossroads here with KO. As I left the event, I was like, damn, I had probably my two best games were maybe Skaven and the Soulblight games. And the reason being was because I just didn't have an outlet to just destroy everything in my opponent's army and then just try and race to score. The KO mirror was pretty fun, but again, I think the army's just limited. I don't think there's anything, I can't take a monster and I can't really build that differently. Like the more I look at allies, like I'm like, oh, maybe I should take some skinks, or maybe I should take a Frostheart Phoenix. It's like, well, just play other armies that use those better. Why would you stay with KO? Like they're not really they're not doing spells or optimizing those ally choices. So I just wanted to kind of finish up this video by saying thank you to the Basement Wargamers. I really think you ran a great event. The prize support was fantastic. I think 7 people basically won up to $400 in prize support by basically getting boxed armies if you won a prize. So that was really cool to see that much money in prize support. I thought the venue had good food. It was, catered 2 days in a row, and there was a lot of beautiful armies, a lot of competitive armies. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this battle report. I hope to make more as I continue playing with KO and more tournaments.